To the top, it's time to jump up, people. Are you ready? So wonderful stuff. Let's talk now Zimbabwe as the first test bowls off, of course, on Saturday at 4 o'clock, live and exclusive on Rush. Aaron Vowles, who's covering the series, is with me. Aaron, let's talk Zimbabwe cricket. The captain and the batsmen and the bowlers. Where will their strength come from in this particular series?
Well, this is a very interesting series for the Chevrons, and I think before first and foremost we discuss the strengths, we have to talk about some of the key omissions, the people who will be unavailable for this series. So first and foremost, the captain, Sean Williams, is ruled out with injury. So that's a massive loss, first and foremost, for the home side. Blessing Muzarabani, the key seam bowler for this Zimbabwean seam attack, also out with injury, as is Tendai Chitara. So they're two seam options straight off the bat that Zimbabwe cannot rely on. As if that wasn't bad enough already, Ryan Burl and Sikandar Raza, the man who took a fifer in that test series in 2017, also unavailable due to franchise commitments. So Zimbabwe are massively depleted heading into this series, as if they weren't already underdogs on paper. That's made this task even more difficult for them heading into this series. With that being said, though, they have been bolstered. They have been galvanised by a certain Gary Ballance from England. Now, Ballance hasn't played a test since 2017, but in the formats, he averages 37, and that was for England. In first-class cricket as well, averages nearly 50. So even though he might be a bit rusty, he hasn't played in the Logan Cup, which is Zimbabwe's domestic cricket tournament, he's still a fantastic player. And on his day, he's very, very dangerous. So Gary Ballance, it will be the majority of the headlines, I think, from a Zimbabwean perspective, will dominate on him because of his return to his nation of birth. But I think if he gets some form, he could definitely be a dangerous player in this series. Then the captain, who isn't usually the captain, Craig Irvine, usually bats at number 3 for Zimbabwe, very, very dependable middle order option, can offer a little bit of bowling as well. He is an off-break bowler in domestic cricket, but hasn't bowled a single delivery in test cricket. So he is an interesting option to have as the captain. Hasn't actually played a test match since 2020. So his captaincy style, his leadership will definitely be under the microscope from a Zimbabwean perspective heading into this series. And then aside from the captain, aside from Gary Ballance, in my opinion, where I think a real undervalued strength of Zimbabwe might lie is actually with the seam bowlers. Now, Donald Tirapano is not an internationally recognisable name, but in Zimbabwe, he has been phenomenal, whether that's in domestic cricket, whether that's in test cricket. He's so dependable, he's so reliable. He also offers an option with the bats, batting at number 7 or 8, depending on the makeup of the side. So I think he's going to be someone to watch out for as well. So all in all, Barry, just to kind of summarise, I think the real strength for Zimbabwe, that middle order first and foremost, Donald Tirapano with that experience. I also think Brandon Mavuta could be a little bit of a wildcard option. He's a leg spinner, only in his mid-20s, and he's been in fantastic form in the Logan Cup. Took an 11 for in Kwekwe, for example. So he'll be in good form and good confidence heading into these test matches. And aside from that, the big man, Donald Tirapano, I do think you've got to watch out for him. He's going to have a good series, whether that's with a bat or ball in hand. If all of these things come together, and that is a massive if, Zimbabwe could pull off an upset. But I've got to be completely honest, as much as I love Zimbabwe, as passionate as I am about cricket in the country, I do see the West Indies winning this particular series.
I honestly think that the series will lie a lot depending on the fitness of the West Indies players. If you do have a fully fit Shannon Gabriel, he'll cause problems. But I'm just also a little worried about the conditions in Zimbabwe. I understand it's going to be an extremely flat deck, so there might not be a lot for Gabriel. There might not be a lot for Alzari Joseph. And if Roach does play, there won't be a lot for him unless he gets some movement. I am just worried about the conditions in Bulawayo. The conditions in Bulawayo could be very, very batting friendly. And if the West Indies do meet a very batting-friendly condition, if they bat first, yes, they could pull it off. But if they do frustrate themselves with Zimbabwe sticking them up, especially Gary Ballance making a return, then it's going to be very difficult for them to come and bat after being so tired. And we've seen what could happen to the West Indies when they're in the field for a day and a half. They kind of get depleted. Don't matter how the conditions are. They don't have that same amount of confidence when they're batting second in depleted conditions. So there are some concerns, and we have to be realistic about West Indies cricket. It has not been the strongest, especially in the Test cricket format. and that is indeed a little bit of a worry. You know, 2 Test series, is this a nice little precursor to the South African series? How do you view that? Because that's obviously going to be the showpiece of the early part of the South African summer.
Well, it will, Barry, and I do think it will be a precursor in some regards. I think in particular for the batting lineup of the West Indies, this will be pivotal. But as I mentioned, the conditions in Bulawayo will be massively different compared to South Africa, as will the standard of bowling that they're facing. So we can't have it as an out-and-out litmus test. I do think that the West Indies will be facing a completely different beast with South Africa. But in terms of getting these guys back into rhythm, into confidence, wouldn't it be fantastic as well for someone like Chanderpaul to get a century? You know, just for us as cricket purists, given the surname, given the family heritage, I'd love to see Tags score a ton in Zimbabwe. But I think that is the key thing for Zimbabwe. For West Indies in this tour of Zimbabwe will be the batting. They've got to get some rhythm, get some confidence. If you can win this series 1 or 2-0, great way to go into that Test series against South Africa later this year.
Now, the West Indies have got a new coaching staff. They've said goodbye to Phil Simmons. There's no more to decide. And, of course, Roddy Estwick is gone. And there's now, of course, the fill-in in Andre Kohli. How much would that be of a difference for them?
Well, it's an interesting question, Barry, because it is still very early days with this coaching setup. And let's not forget that Andre is an interim. So he hasn't actually been given the role full-time as of this show. So I don't know. I don't know, to be completely honest. I think when it comes to that coaching staff right now, I think the biggest addition for the West Indies is actually the performance mentor, which is a certain Brian Lara, the Prince, the 6th leading Test run scorer of all time. Just having him in the camp is massive for confidence. He's going to instill that belief as well, isn't he? And the passion. He's going to reignite that fire for the maroon of the West Indies, because you look back on his performances for the Windies as a nation, they were phenomenal. They're some of the greatest knocks ever witnessed in the history of the game. He gave everything for the Maroons, so I think he's going to be the real key addition. But I will be watching out, in particular in this series, for moments of vulnerability or moments where the confidence might be a little bit shaken. That's where I think the leadership group, with the likes of Andre, with the likes of Brian Lara, that's where it'll come into it. If the West Indies do struggle with a rough patch in the game, will the heads drop? And if they don't, I think that could be quite a good sign heading into the future. That'll be a real key focus for me heading into this particular series.
How do you see Lara's role in such a short space of time? He was one of the greatest, if not the greatest batsman of all time. But, you know, he's not had a lot of time to come really and work his magic, get into the heads of the team. Do you see his role as a long-term role? Do you think that his role is one that the West Indies will benefit from because of his greatness and his genius?
100% they'll benefit. I've got no doubt about that whatsoever. When you've got a legend of the game like Brian Charles Lara, it just instills these feelings, these emotions inside of you. It revs you up as a cricketer. And again, as I said, it will really reignite that fire, I think, for the badge. And it's something which has been missing in West Indies cricket, in particular in the Test arena, for a very, very long time. So whether or not it will be a long-term benefit, I don't know. Only time will tell. Brian is a very, very busy man. He's obviously got his IPL commitments. He's got other coaching commitments around the globe. So whether or not he can commit full time, that's up to him. We don't know at this moment in time. But for this series, just having him in and around the camp, to have someone like that to rub shoulders with, to learn off of, one of the greatest to ever play the game of cricket, I think it'll be beneficial. And fingers crossed it does have the desired effect on this West Indies team, because if it does, again, it'll be great experience, a great motivator to take away into that series against South Africa, because that is going to be very, very tough indeed for the men in maroon.
Well, we have a little bit of a surprise for you. We talked a lot about Shannon Gabriel coming back. Well, here's a little interview with him. The funny side of Shannon Gabriel, a couple of questions about this pacer from Trinidad and Tobago that we all love.
Shannon Gabriel, firstly, what are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
3 words would be funny, calm, passionate.
You're almost at 200 international wickets for the West Indies. Which one was your favorite?
I think will be my first Test wicket.
What's your best Test cricket memory?
Walking on my debut test match, which was Lords.
One wish, bat higher up the order or a test cricket hat-trick?
Nah, that would definitely be batting higher.
What's your most embarrassing on-field moment?
I think it was a test match against Pakistan.
What happened?
I think we needed to bat to save the game, and no, that was embarrassing.
What's your favorite movie?
It'd be Gladiator.
How about your favorite cheat meal?
Favorite treat meal will be KFC.
Besides your phone, clothes, and cricket gear, what's your on-tour must-have?
Pictures of my kids, family.
If you were stuck on a deserted island, which teammate would you call to rescue you, and why?
Darren Bravo,
Why?
because he just makes life easy.
What's the funniest thing a fan has ever said to you?
Remember playing a test match and they were chanting, Shannon, show us.
If you could meet any other athlete from any other sport, who would it be?
I wish I could have met the late Kobe Bryant.
Why?
Because his mentality and his work ethic and the way that he did things to be what he was and achieve what he achieved, it's great.
Any hobbies or special talents outside of cricket?
Outside of cricket, I like hunting, fishing.
All right, wonderful stuff and funny stuff as well. So that's it for On Tour right here on Rush. We'll be back after the first test with a review of that first test. We hope it goes all 5 days. We won't have a program every night as usual, but we will have a review program, and we look forward to reviewing and previewing how things should go for that very next test. So, Aaron, first up, is it going to be 1-0 West Indies, or is it going to be 1-0 Zimbabwe, or is it going to be 0-0 going into the second test? Your last word.
Right, I have looked at the weather beforehand because that has been a problem in the past when it comes to my predictions. So there is a little bit of rain around for the first 2 days. With that being said, though, I'm still pretty confident. I don't know where this confidence has come from, but I think the West Indies, as they did in 2017, will take this series 1-0. So I'm going to go with a 1-0 victory.
Okay. Well, join us after the first test in Bulawayo, right here in Rush for On Tour, as we continue to look at the West Indies versus Zimbabwe series. I'm Barry Wilkinson on behalf of Aaron Viles. Bye-bye for now.
To jump up, people, are you ready?